Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we've got a bit of a different video and one that could age very poorly in a few years time. Today I'm going to attempt to predict how many wins every single MotoGP rider will have by the time they retire. This is going to be an extremely difficult challenge, especially considering how many young riders we've got in MotoGP these days. This could age extremely poorly, so I say we just get into it. If you go on to enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel, and I want to know your guys' predictions in the comments below. But without further ado, let's get into it. We're going to do this in order of the riders' numbers, so we're going to start with Johann Zarco. Now Johann Zarco, he is 34 years old and is currently on a Honda. He has one race victory to his name at the moment, and I will be astonished if he ends his career with more than one race victory. I've got written down for Johann Zarco one race victory over his whole career. Of course, that brilliant victory in Phillip Island last year. A wonderful moment, and I'll be honest, I really don't see him repeating that, especially on that shit box of a Honda. I think by the time Honda get their act together, Johann Zarco will be long retired, so unfortunately no more race wins for him. Next up we have Luca Marini. He currently sits at 0 race victories, and at the age of 27, he's got a good few years left in his career to maybe get 1 or 2. However, same with Zarco, he's on a Honda, and the fact that he's never got a race victory before and he's been a bit underwhelming at Honda makes me think that when he, or if he leaves Honda, he won't exactly be filled to the brim with offers from the best teams in the world. It'd most likely just be a return to VR46. To me, Marini is not that rider, he's just a bit average, so I've got for him 0 race victories. Next up we have Maverick Vinales. Now this is a very interesting one. Maverick Vinales is such a strange rider. On some weekends he can be the reincarnation of Valentino Rossi himself, and then on other weekends he literally looks like he can't be asked to be there. So far this has landed Maverick Vinales 10 race victories. And do I think he'll get any more on KTM, making it a 4th manufacturer that he scores a victory on? I think yes, I think he'll get one more victory across his career. Vinales, he'll pull a rabbit out of the hat somewhere, probably in the upcoming year in 2025. It will be a track that he's used to, that he's good at, like Assen or Kota. I think he's got one more race victory in him before he retires, or gets booted off the paddock. Who knows? I think he's got one more race victory in him, so I'm predicting 11 race victories for Maverick Vinales. I think so far these have been quite simple, but this is where things start to get a bit tricky. We've got Fabio Quartararo next. Quartararo currently sits on 11 race victories, and he should have a lot more. He would have a lot more. He would be in the 20s if Yamaha weren't so pathetic over the last 2 years. Quartararo has the talent to end his career with so many race victories, but he's wasting his prime years at the moment on Yamaha, and I think how many race victories he ends on will strongly depend on how Yamaha get their act together over the next few years. I think the upcoming year they'll show some improvement, but I doubt we'll get any victories. But I think over time we will see Yamaha improve and Quartararo fight up towards the higher end of the grid more often. And I think once the regulation changes come in 2027 will be a big year for Quartararo. Either Yamaha will get their act together and he'll be a title challenger once again, or he'll jump ship and go to somebody like Ducati who's already at the top. And I really do think that once he gets put on a good bike again, he'll be a consistent challenger at the front. He might win another world title, who knows. But I think once he gets on a good bike, he'll get multiple race victories per year. And he's only 25, he's probably got at least another 9-10 years left of his career. If he gets between 2 or 3 race victories per season, that'd give him a lot of race victories he'd end with. The number I've written down is 32 race victories for Quartararo. Much higher than the 11 he's currently on, and I think he's got it in him to get into the high 30s at least. I think the reason I haven't gone higher is because I think by the time he gets on a good bike, the people like David Alonso, Pedro Acosta, they'll be full flourish by then. Bagnaia will still be good. He'll have a lot of tough competitors with him, so I can't see him like dominating a season, getting 10 victories in a season or anything. Right, that was complicated, but thankfully we've got a bit of an easier one next. We've got Franco Morbidelli. He's another one who I will be absolutely astonished if he gets another victory in his career. Realistically, he's only got one more season left in him. I'd be shocked if he gets retained beyond 2025. Morbidelli, he's currently got 3 race victories to his name, all scored in 2020, I believe, and he's not getting another one. I'm predicting 3 race victories for him. Another interesting one coming up now is Enea Bastianini. He currently sits on 7 race victories, and if he was staying on the Ducati, I'd predict him to end with quite a few race victories. But he's not. He's going to a Tech 3 KTM, where I think he'll struggle to get victories, to be honest. He's got a 2-year contract there. I see him maybe squeaking 1 victory there, but then I do think he'll get on a good bike after that. When the regulations change, I think he'll get back onto a factory team and he'll eke out a few more race victories in his career. The number I've got written down is 11 race victories for Bastianini. Ultimately, he's just not a consistent enough rider to get multiple in a year when he's not on the best bike. I think he'll get a few race victories here and then at tracks that we know he's good at, but I think he'll mostly just hover around the podium spots and struggle to actually get that those victories. Next up we have Raul Fernandez. Another interesting one this. Raul Fernandez, he's entering his 4th year of MotoGP next year, and he's only 24. He's got a lot of experience for his age, and he's shown some good talent over his career, especially in Catalonia this year when he was going to win until he crashed out. He's clearly got a lot of talent and speed. However, I think his problem is that I really don't see him being given any top factory machinery over his career. I've got written down he'll get 1 race victory over the course of his career. I don't see him becoming any sort of consistent front runner in the future, but I do see him pulling like one magical moment from nowhere to clinch a race victory one weekend. So yeah, I've got 1 victory for Raul Fernandez. He's quite young. I don't see him being booted out of MotoGP anytime soon. He's got a long career ahead of him. I think he'll get 1 race victory over his career. Next we have Brad Binder. Brad Binder is actually a lot older than I thought he was. He's 29. He's probably only got like 4 or 5 years left in him. And especially in recent years, Brad Binder has struggled to get race victories. He's got sprint victories, but not any victories on a Sunday since that magical day in Austria 2021. Binder has just become a consistent rider who gets 5th every race. And because of that, I doubt he'll get any higher than KTM. I think he'll probably stay at KTM for all of his career. That being said, we have seen in the past he's able to perform brilliantly all of a sudden out of nowhere. He suits the wet weather, which I think could come in handy. I think he'll get 2 more race victories over his career, ending his career with 4 race victories. He'll have a career very similar to someone like Jack Miller, I think. A solid rider, but never good enough to be a title contender, and ending with roughly 4 victories. Next we have Somkat Chamtra, the first of the rookies who are going to be the most difficult to predict, I think. But luckily I really don't see Somkat Chamtra getting any race victories over his MotoGP career. There's already a lot of doubts over whether he deserved the MotoGP seat in the first place, considering there's about 10 riders in Moto2 last year that are just better than him. And considering he's on what's probably the worst bike on the grid, he's already 26 years old, it's not like he's got years and years in him. I don't see Chamtra getting any race victories. However, I do think he could get a few surprise podiums here and then, if it rains at tracks he likes. But I think even with his wet weather genius, that bike is too shit for him to get a race victory over his career. And I also wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't have the longest career. Considering the amount of talent that's coming through in the lower ranks, if Chamtra underwhelms in this year or next year, he could easily get binned off by 2027. So unfortunately, a big fat 0 victories for Somkat Chamtra. Next up we have Joan Mir, and another interesting one. I'll be honest, I think the best of Joan Mir has been completely just beaten out of him. The constant crashes, I don't think we're going to see the Joan Mir we saw win the World Championship. I'll be honest, even if Honda get their act together, I don't think Mir will be the one getting them race victories. I do think we'll see an upturn in form for him in years in the future, but I don't see him getting any more race victories, which is such a shame for a man who literally won the World Championship in 2020. So in my opinion, Joan Mir is going to end his career with the same amount of World Championships as victories, and that being 1. And even though he's only 27, we see a lot of rumours about him retiring, you know. I really wouldn't be shocked if after his current contract with Honda ends, that he retires at a fairly young age, which would be really sad to see, but I wouldn't be shocked if it happens. Right, we got the most difficult one coming up next. Pedro Acosta. This guy, we've already seen he's got the talent to go right to the very, very top of MotoGP. It's more just a question of how many victories he's going to get. He doesn't have any at the moment, but we already know he's going to get one over his career. We already know he's going to get dozens of victories over his career. It's a question of how many. And considering how much talent he's got, he's probably got at least 14 or 15 years left in him. Pedro Acosta's career will vastly depend on any career decisions he makes, any injuries he gets. It could all go terribly for him in a couple years' time. Or he could go on to break the victories record in MotoGP. Nobody knows. However, if we take a look at another Spanish megastar in Jorge Lorenzo, he got 47 victories over 12 years in MotoGP, just under 4 per season. If we apply that to Acosta's remaining 14 seasons, which is what I'm predicting for him, that'd leave him with 55 race victories, and that's the number I've gone with. One more victory than Mick Doohan. I think he'll do it. Acosta is such a fantastic talent, and considering how many years he's got left in him, and providing he stays fit and gets on good bikes over his career, he'll have many years at the front, getting 5-6 race victories per year. Yeah, 55 is the number I've gone with, which is a lot, but I think he'll do it. Next up we have Alex Rins, and I'll be completely honest, I think Alex Rins has had the best of him beaten out. I think that leg injury last year, especially, has really taken the best out of him, because since then, Alex Rins has looked a shell of what he used to be. On his day, Alex Rins was a phenomenal rider, especially on that Suzuki, and he even showed managing to win on a Honda in 2023. He can be a fantastic rider on his day and at a track that he likes, but I think he's had that beaten out of him by injuries. And even if Yamaha get their act together, I really don't think that Alex Rins will be the one spearheading their success. I'll be honest, he's currently sitting on 6 race victories. I don't think he'll get any more. I think once his contract with Yamaha runs out, he'll either go to a backmarket team or he'll just leave the grid altogether, because his form last year was shocking and he showed very little signs of improvement. So yeah, Alex Rins, he's currently got 6 race victories, and that is what I think he will end his career with. I don't see him getting another victory across his whole career. We could say the same about the next person really, Jack Miller. He's got 4 victories to his name currently, and he's just joined that Pramac Yamaha team. And like some of the others, I would be amazed if Jack Miller went on to win another race. We've seen before he's taken advantage of wet weather, and I guess that could happen in the future. But we saw even this year on the KTM, he still finished behind Pedro Acosta and Brad Binder in the wet in Thailand. I just don't think Jack Miller's got it in him anymore. And is he even really still MotoGP standard rider? I'm not sure. I am almost certain that Jack Miller won't get another victory, and I think he will end his career with 4 race victories. Oh, we've got a difficult one now. Fabio Di Gianantonio. Diggia is of course going to be on a factory bike next year. Only 3 of them are going to be on the grid next year, meaning if Marquez or Bagnaia come into trouble or crash into each other, he should theoretically be the favourite to win some races next year and maybe the year after. Di Gianantonio definitely has it in him to get a few race victories on that Ducati. But with the strength of the competition around him, I don't see him becoming any sort of consistent title challenger or anything. I've got written down 6 race victories for him. He's currently got 1, that victory in Qatar in 2023, and I think he'll get 5 more over his career. He's only 26, he's got a long way ahead in his career. I think he can get around and about 1 race win per season, that's about his level. And considering how his MotoGP career started, if you were to tell him at that point that he'd end his career with 6 race victories, he'd take it in a heartbeat. So that is what I've got predicted for Diggia. For me and Aldeguer, for me I think this might be the hardest to predict and the one that could age the worst. For me and Aldeguer is such a wild card going into next year. Nobody knows how he'll perform, nobody knows if he'll completely flop and get binned off after 6 months, or whether he'll adapt to MotoGP immediately and become a front runner, or whether he'll just become a bit average. It's really hard to tell what he'll go on to do in his career. But put it this way, for me and Aldeguer is only 19, he has got a very long way ahead of him in his career, and considering the amount of talent that he's shown previously in Moto2, I really think that he's in it for the long haul in MotoGP. However, I really struggle to see him becoming a championship contender. We might see one year where he puts up somewhat of a challenge, but I don't see him getting too many race victories over his career. I know he's only young, but his career is already reminding me a lot of Maverick Vinales' career. Very inconsistent. Some races he's phenomenal, some races absolute dog shite. That is what for me in Aldeguer is, that is what Maverick Vinales has been his whole career. Considering Vinales currently sits on 10 race victories, that is around the ballpark I think Aldeguer will get. However, Vinales was helped by the fact he was on the fastest bike for a year in 2017. I don't think for me and Aldeguer will ever really get that privilege of being on the best bike and the best team. So I've got written down 8 Grand Prix victories for me and Aldeguer over his whole career. Like I said, this could age really poorly. He could go on to get 30, 40, 50 victories over his career, or he could get a big fat 0. I have no idea, but I think 8 is a pretty safe prediction. Not safe, but it's a prediction I'm happy with, because I just can't envision him becoming one of the best on the grid. I think his ceiling is to the standard of someone like Maverick Vinales. Right, next we've got Pecco Bagnaia. How many does he currently have? He's currently got 29 victories in MotoGP, and of course he's on the best bike on the best team, and for the next 2 years, certainly at least, he's going to get a lot of victories. I'll say around about 15 victories over the next 2 years. That'd put him at 44, and then once the regulations come in, I reckon he'll stay at Ducati, but I don't see Ducati being the powerhouse they are, and as he gets a bit older he'll gradually get less victories. And I've got written down 52 race victories over his whole career. That is what I think Bagnaia will achieve. I don't think we'll see a season like the one we've just seen where he gets 10 race victories in a year. I really don't think we'll see another season like that from him, especially with Marc Marquez as his teammate for the next 2 years. And like I said, I don't think Ducati will be the powerhouse they are at the moment come the regulation changes. So while he may go on to win multiple more World Championships, I don't think we'll see them in quite the dominant fashion we've seen in previous years. So yeah, 52 race victories, going down as one of the greatest of all time. I think that'd put him in the top 5 of all time. Let me check. Yeah, as it stands, 52 race victories would put Pecco Bagnaia in 5th of all time in MotoGP. He'd go down as a true legend of the sport with that amount, and I think 52 is a good prediction. I'm not going too high, and I'm not going too low either, because realistically he's going to get a lot over the next 2 years. Right, now we move on to Bagnaia's best mate, Marco Bezzecchi. Marco Bezzecchi currently sits on 3 race victories, all scored in 2023. He's now moving over to the Aprilia, and I'd be very surprised if he's able to get consistent race victories while he's on that Aprilia. However, Bezzecchi's obviously got a lot of talent. He's 26, he's got time on his side. I think he's got it within him to get a few more race victories over his career. He's shown that he's good in the wet, which is always handy. I've got written down 5 race victories, 2 more over his career. I'll be honest, I don't think he'll be given the machinery in his career to really fight for consistent victories. And especially this year, we've also seen that quite a few times when he's fighting at the front, he just crashes out. But he's got it in him to get a few more race victories, and on his day, he's very much capable of getting victories. So I've got down 5 written down for Marco Bezzecchi. Now we've got Alex Marquez. He currently sits on 0 victories, however he does have 2 sprint victories to his name, and Alex Marquez clearly has a lot of talent. There are certain tracks which he is great at, namely Aragon and Sachsenring. Great at those tracks, and he's got the talent in him to get 1 race victory over his career, I think. He's done it on the Saturday on 2 occasions, he just needs to do it on a Sunday, and I think he'll do it in the remaining 4 or 5 years left of his career. So Alex Marquez, 1 race victory, I predict. Next we've got Ayagura. Now this is a bit of a difficult one, this. Ayagura is obviously a very talented rider, and he's extremely smart as well. However, I really don't see him being any sort of championship material. He's even said it himself, he's not really one of the superstars of MotoGP. We've seen over Ayagura's career really, he's not somebody who just grabs victories left, right and centre. He's a man who's very smart and tactical and relies a lot on consistency for his success. His consistency was the main reason he won the Moto2 World Championship. I don't see him getting many race victories over his career. I think his career will be very similar to that of Miguel Oliveira, where on his day he could completely blitz the field and win the race, and he's also good in the wet, Ayagura. I've got written down 4 race victories, which might be a bit low, but I think he'll be a very, very good rider, but I really don't see him being a consistent front runner, so I think 4 victories for Ayagura is about right, I think. We've got Miguel Oliveira next. He currently has 5 race victories to his name, all of which were scored on the KTM, and 2 of which were scored in the wet. Oliveira has proved himself over his career to be an absolute god in the wet. In 2022, when he had a bit of an underwhelming year really, he still managed to pull 2 race victories out the hat due to it raining. And I'll be honest, even if he's probably not as good as he was in previous years, I think the injuries have taken a lot out of him. Even if he's not as good as his prime, I still think he's got it in him to get another race victory in the wet somewhere. Oliveira, he just seems to be unstoppable in the wet at times. So he's currently got 5 race victories, and I think he'll end his career with 6. I think he's got 1 more in him in the wet somewhere. Right, we've only got 2 left, and it's 2 big ones, starting with Jorge Martin. He's currently got 8 victories, which is a surprisingly low amount really. I thought he'd had more, but thinking about it, he does have a lot of sprint victories and not too many victories on the Sunday. Now, of course, next year he's moving to Aprilia, who, I'll be honest, I doubt there'll be any sort of consistent challenges for victories in the next 2 years. I see Jorge Martin maybe getting 1 or 2 per year, but I doubt he'll be fighting up there every weekend. It'll be sort of similar to what Aprilia have done over the past 2 years really, where a few weekends they're up there and able to clinch a victory, but mostly just fighting for podiums with the KTM. So yeah, I'd say 3 victories over 2 years with Aprilia, but I do think Jorge Martin has another career switch in him that will put him back further up towards the front of the field. I do envision maybe a return to Ducati one day. I mean, Martin himself hasn't brought that out. I wouldn't be shocked to see him go onto a KTM if they even exist in a few years. Or maybe even a Yamaha. Like Jorge Martin, being a world champion, he'll have a lot of options. However, he's never been a man who gets a lot of race victories, and I think that'll continue across his whole career really. Even if he gets put on better machinery than the Aprilia, or even if Aprilia are really good next year, I don't see him getting a multitude of race victories. I mean, he won a world championship while only getting 3. I've got written down 17 victories for Jorge Martin. Currently sits on 8, I think he'll get 9 more over the course of his career, which might be a bit low, but I do think that over the next few years we'll see a huge rise in the young talent, and it will make it a lot harder to win races. So 17 with Jorge Martin I think it's a good prediction. And finally, Marc Marquez. He obviously has more than anyone on the grid at the moment. He currently sits on 62 race victories. And I guess the main question is, will Marquez beat Rossi's victory record of 89 wins over the next remaining few years of his career? And I'm here to tell you the answer to that question is no, in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, he'll get a lot of race victories, especially over the next 2 years with Ducati. Similar to Bagnaia, I think he'll get around 15 victories over the next 2 years. But after that, I really don't see him staying at Ducati. I think there is a very real chance that he retires once his contract with Ducati ends, especially if he gets another big injury. However, apart from that, I do think that either Ducati will want to move on from an ageing Marc Marquez because he'll be 33 by then. 34 in fact, he'll be 34 by the time the 2027 season comes around. I really don't see Ducati wanting to keep him around, so I think he'll either return to KTM or a return to Honda. And as good as Marc Marquez is, I don't see him winning too many race victories at the age of 34, especially considering how many injuries he's been through over his career. I think once he leaves Ducati at the end of 2027, we'll see the end of his career be very similar to Valentino Rossi's, where he's a consistent frontrunner but he's not able to get too many race victories, apart from the odd occasion where he turns up and brings it home. However, I guess the number you're waiting for is how many victories do I think Marc Marquez will get over his career? And the number I've gone with for Marc Marquez is 81 race victories. It's currently sitting on 62, I think he'll get another 19 over the remainder of his career. Whether that's 2 years or 5 years, that's the number that I'm confident with. I'd be very surprised and very impressed also if he beats Rossi's record. He'd need 28 victories to get that over, not a very long time frame, considering he's getting on a bit. Like, I really don't think that in 3 years' time Marc Marquez will be as good as he currently is now. I think after next year, I think we will see a bit of a decline in Marc Marquez, which is only natural with age. So yeah, 81 victories is what I've gone with Marc Marquez. That is the final prediction, that is what I'm happy with. And yeah, that is everyone. I've gone through the entire MotoGP grid and predicted how many victories they will end their career on. This was a fun challenge and I'm really looking forward to seeing how well this ages over the coming years. Let me know your guys' predictions in the comments. I really want to know how well or how badly I've done with this. I think most of these predictions are pretty solid. However, as it is with MotoGP, this has the capability to age horrendously. So yeah, let me know in the comments what you guys think, and while you're there, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and I will see you guys very soon. Bye bye.